David Torres sat in the secure briefing room of the Velrani royal palace, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. "Let me ensure I understand this correctly," he said carefully. "You want to hire me to pose as Princess Kira's husband for one evening?" The royal security advisor nodded. "For the formal gathering tomorrow evening, yes. The situation is politically complex, Mr. Torres. There's a faction within our nobility that opposes the current royal family. They've been making increasingly bold threats. Princess Kira, as the heir, is particularly vulnerable to both direct threats and political attacks designed to undermine her position." "And how does hiring a fake husband help with that?" Velrani culture places enormous importance on family stability and partnership. A royal without a partner is perceived as vulnerable, incomplete, politically weak. Princess Kira is unmarried, and the opposition has been using this against her, suggesting she lacks the judgment to maintain relationships, implying instability, questioning her fitness to eventually rule. David was beginning to understand. "So you need someone to sit beside her and project stability." "Exactly. But it must be someone who can convincingly play the role without being entangled in Velrani political factions. Someone whose presence provides legitimacy but who isn't actually part of our political structure. A human civilian contractor is perfect. You're outside our political system. Your presence suggests the princess has stable partnerships, and once the gathering concludes and the immediate threat is addressed, the arrangement simply ends." "How much does this pay?" 5,000 credits for one evening's work. You'll be extensively briefed on appropriate behavior, responses, and protocols. You'll sit beside the princess during the gathering, respond appropriately to social interactions, project the image of a long-term partnership, and once the event concludes, you leave and never see the princess again. 5,000 credits for one evening of playing dress-up at a fancy party. David had done stranger jobs. I'm in. 2 hours of intensive protocol briefing later, David was introduced to Princess Kira herself. She was tall, elegant, with the distinctive features of Velrani royalty, and an expression of cold professionalism that made clear she viewed this entire arrangement as a necessary inconvenience. "Mr. Torres," she said formally, "you've been briefed on what's required." "Yes, Your Highness. I sit beside you at the gathering, respond appropriately to formal greetings, project the image of a stable partnership, and once the event concludes, I leave." "Good. Let me be clear. This is a political necessity, nothing more. You will sit beside me, respond to formal greetings appropriately, and maintain the appearance of a long-term partnership. When the gathering concludes, you will leave and we will not interact again. Is this arrangement clear?" "Perfectly clear, Your Highness." "Good. The gathering begins at sunset tomorrow. Security will brief you on additional protocols this evening. Do not deviate from your instructions." She dismissed him with a gesture, already turning to speak with her advisors. David had the distinct impression he'd just been classified as another piece of furniture to be positioned appropriately, and then removed once no longer needed. Which was fine. He was being paid extremely well to be human furniture for one evening. He could manage that. The formal gathering was held in the palace's grand ceremonial hall. Hundreds of Velrani nobility in elaborate formal dress, political tensions running high beneath the surface of diplomatic pleasantries. David sat beside Princess Kira at the elevated head table, acutely aware of the scrutiny from the assembled nobles. Many were clearly hostile to the royal family, their formal respect barely concealing political opposition. Princess Kira was perfectly controlled, every response precisely calibrated, every gesture measured, her expression maintaining appropriate royal dignity while revealing nothing. But David noticed things the assembled nobles might not. The tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped her wine glass slightly too tightly, the exhaustion behind her formal smile. She was under incredible stress, performing flawlessly while being politically attacked through layers of diplomatic courtesy. During a brief break in formal proceedings while servants refreshed drinks, David did something not in his instructions. He spoke to her quietly, genuinely. "Your Highness, you're doing incredibly well. I know this is difficult." She looked at him, surprise flickering across her carefully controlled expression. "You're not required to provide commentary, simply maintain appearance. I know, but you look like you could use someone acknowledging that this is hard." For the first time that evening her mask slipped slightly. "It is difficult. These gatherings are always political battlegrounds disguised as formal events, and tonight, with the opposition planning something, you're handling it with remarkable grace. For what it's worth, if I were actually your partner, I'd be proud of how you're managing this." She stared at him, as if trying to determine if he was mocking her. But David's expression was completely genuine, simple human honesty without calculation or hidden agenda. "Thank you," she said quietly, and something in her posture relaxed infinitesimally. As the evening continued, David proved himself different from what she'd expected. When a hostile noble made a veiled insult directed at the princess, something about young royals lacking the judgment of their ancestors, David responded before thinking. His Highness finds it interesting that wisdom is being measured by agreement with one's critics rather than by actual governance outcomes. Princess Kira's leadership has strengthened 3 trade alliances and resolved 2 territorial disputes in the past year alone. Perhaps wisdom should be measured by results rather than by satisfying those who oppose all change. The noble sputtered, clearly not expecting a response from what he'd assumed was merely decorative support. Princess Kira looked at David with open surprise. He wasn't instructed to defend her, wasn't supposed to engage politically at all. He'd simply reacted instinctively to someone being cruel to someone else. Later, when opposition nobles were clearly coordinating some kind of challenge, whispered conversations, strategic positioning around the hall, David placed his hand over hers. Not as performance for watching nobles, but as genuine reassurance. "Whatever they're planning, you're going to handle it. You're clearly very good at this." She looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. This human wasn't just performing a role for pay. He was actually being kind to her. Genuinely, without calculation or agenda. When had anyone last done that? The political challenge came during the formal address period. A coalition of opposition nobles stood together, demanding recognition to speak. Their leader, a powerful duke, addressed the assembled gathering. "We propose a vote of no confidence in the current royal leadership. The heir apparent lacks the stability and judgment necessary for future rule. She maintains no stable partnerships, shows disregard for traditional values, and places personal preference above duty. We formally challenge her fitness to eventually assume the throne." The hall erupted in controlled chaos, supporters and opponents of the royal family maneuvering for position, political calculations happening in real time. Princess Kira stood, and the hall fell silent. Her response was brilliant, a speech about her family's service, about her commitment to her people, about how true strength comes from having genuine partnerships based on mutual respect rather than political convenience. "You speak of stability through tradition. I speak of stability through competence, through dedication to my people's welfare, through partnerships built on genuine respect rather than political calculation. My personal life and my fitness to lead are not determined by whether I satisfy those who oppose all progress. They are determined by my actions, my decisions, and my unwavering commitment to serve." Throughout her speech, David sat beside her, his presence reinforcing her claims of having stable partnerships. When she referenced genuine relationships, she glanced at him, a fleeting moment that the entire hall noticed. The opposition's challenge faltered. Other nobles began speaking in support of the princess. The vote of no confidence never materialized. The challenge collapsed under the weight of her response and the visible demonstration of stability she'd just provided. The gathering concluded with Princess Kira having successfully defended her position and deterred the immediate threats. David's role was complete. As guests began departing and David stood to leave, his contract fulfilled, his payment already transferred, Princess Kira's hand caught his. "Don't go." David looked down at her, surprised. The carefully controlled royal mask was gone, replaced by something raw and vulnerable he hadn't seen all evening. "Your Highness, the arrangement was for the gathering. It's concluded. The threat is resolved. I was hired for one evening, and that evening is over. I know what the arrangement was. I'm asking you, not as a contract, not as a role, please don't go, not yet." David sat back down slowly. "Are you all right?" "No, yes, I don't know." She was still holding his hand as if afraid he'd disappear if she let go. "For 3 hours you treated me like a person, not a princess, not a political asset, not a symbol to be positioned strategically. You were kind to me because you're apparently incapable of being unkind, not because protocol demanded it or because you were calculating advantage. Do you know how rare that is in my life? I imagine incredibly rare. I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who interact with me through layers of protocol, political calculation, and fear. Every conversation is performed. Every relationship is strategic. Every moment of my life is public and political. You sat beside me tonight and treated me with simple human decency without any calculation. When you walk out that door, I go back to a life where absolutely no one does that." David understood what she was saying. "You're lonely. I'm profoundly isolated. I have advisors, guards, servants, political allies, but I don't have friends. I don't have people who see me as Kira rather than as the princess. Tonight, for a few hours, you did that. And when you stood to leave, I realized I couldn't bear going back to that isolation immediately." They talked privately in a small antechamber after the last guests departed. Princess Kira, just Kira now with her formal mask set aside, explained her life with an honesty David suspected was rare for her. "Every interaction is political. Every relationship is strategic. Every conversation happens through multiple layers of protocol and calculation. I was raised for this, taught to manage it, to use it effectively. But that doesn't mean it isn't lonely. I have no one in my life who simply cares about me as a person rather than as a political entity." "That sounds exhausting." "It is, and tonight you treated me differently. Not because you had some strategic reason to, but because you saw someone struggling and your instinct was to help. That's just who you are, apparently. You defended me to that noble not because it was in your contract, but because someone was being cruel and you reacted instinctively. You offered reassurance because you noticed I was stressed, not because you were calculating how to appear supportive. I was hired to play a role," David admitted. "But you're right that it became something more genuine. I wasn't being kind because of the contract. I was being kind because you clearly needed kindness and I was there to provide it. That's just how I am. That's exactly why it matters." Kira's voice was quiet but intense. "You didn't calculate advantage. You simply saw someone struggling and chose to help. Do you know how valuable that is to someone in my position? How rare. What happens now? I can't stay as your fake husband indefinitely. The deception would eventually be discovered and cause massive political problems." "I know, but..." Kira paused, clearly working through something difficult. "What if we were honest about what actually happened? You were hired for security and political purposes. The arrangement served its purpose. But during that time, we discovered genuine compatibility. Not romantic necessarily, but connection. Real connection between two people who found they actually liked each other. You're suggesting we could actually get to know each other, honestly. Not as princess and hired contractor. As two people who discovered unexpected connection during unusual circumstances. No pretense, no roles, just seeing if there's something real here worth exploring. That would be politically complicated." "Everything in my life is politically complicated. That's not a reason to avoid something that might be meaningful. Kira looked at him directly. I'm asking if you want to try. Not if you think it's politically convenient or strategically advantageous. Just, do you want to get to know me as a person and see if we actually have something genuine here? David could walk away, fulfill the contract, take his payment, return to his normal life. It would be simpler, safer, completely reasonable. But he looked at Kira, not Princess Kira, just Kira, who was asking him to stay not because protocol demanded it, but because she'd found genuine human connection and didn't want to lose it. I'd like that, David said. Getting to know you honestly, seeing if there's something real here beyond the role we played tonight. Her relief was palpable. Thank you for staying, for being willing to see if this could be something real. You asked me not to go. That took courage, asking for what you want rather than just accepting what's expected. I've spent my life doing what's expected. Tonight I asked for what I wanted. That's new for me. Their relationship developed over the following months. It was complicated. She was still a princess with enormous responsibilities. He was still a civilian contractor with his own work and life. But they made time for genuine connection. Conversations where she could drop the royal mask and just talk. Moments where he treated her as Kira rather than as Her Highness. The building of actual friendship that had potential to become something deeper if they chose that path. The Valrani court was initially skeptical. Some assumed David was manipulating the princess for advantage. Others couldn't understand why she'd choose a human civilian over politically advantageous matches. But gradually, they saw the princess was genuinely happier, more effective, more confident. Having someone in her life who provided emotional support without political agenda made her a better leader. 8 months after that gathering, David and Kira attended another formal event, this time as genuine partners rather than as a fake arrangement. She introduced him honestly. David Torres, my partner. He was initially hired to pose as my husband during a political crisis. Instead, he showed me what genuine partnership could look like. Someone who sees me as a person, who offers support without calculation, who chose to stay when he could have walked away. We've spent the past months getting to know each other honestly, and I'm grateful every day that he made that choice. David added, I was hired to play a role for one evening. But Kira made me want to stay, not as performance, but as genuine choice. Sometimes the most meaningful relationships begin with pretense, but become real through honesty and mutual decision to see if there's something worth building. The story that had begun with a transactional arrangement, sit beside her, smile appropriately, leave when finished, had become something genuine through simple human kindness shown to someone who desperately needed it, and the courage to stay when you were free to walk away. The princess who'd asked him not to go had offered him the chance to know her honestly, to build something real from a fake beginning. The human who'd been hired for one evening had chosen to stay and discover what genuine partnership with a lonely princess could become. Because connection, once discovered, was worth choosing over convenience. And sometimes the most powerful bonds formed not through grand romance, but through simple kindness extended to someone who'd been surrounded by protocol and politics, but starved for basic human compassion. She'd asked him not to go. He'd chosen to stay. And everything that came after was built on that choice, to see each other honestly, to value connection over convenience, and to prove that genuine partnership could begin with a fake arrangement and become something real through honesty, respect, and the courage to choose each other when neither was obligated to do so.